Hi, my name is Hannah Parrish, and I was asked to tell you a little bit about a place that I have called home for 23 years, and that's Santa Barbara, California. Santa Barbara is about 90 miles north of Los Angeles, and there's kind of a couple now identified as cities that weren't previously, that are adjacent to Santa Barbara, that we kind of all consider to be part of Santa Barbara. So there's Santa Barbara proper, and then just north of us is Goleta, and that's where UCSB and the airport is. Just south of us is Montecito. It's a smaller community, about 10,000 people, but all together we kind of create the Santa Barbara community. And Santa Barbara is located, like I said, north of Los Angeles, and we are kind of nestled right between the ocean and the mountains, the San Ynez Mountains, and the Los Padres National Forest is right behind us. And we're kind of like, it's like a long, narrow community. So when I was asked to share with you a little bit about the landscape here, and what's changed over time, I thought, of course, maybe based on some recent activity, but I thought about our mountains that are a big part of our lives here, living here, because it's a year-round recreational outdoor community. We hike in our mountains. We bike. We picnic. We go to the hot springs. We take visitors up just to go see the view of the city and the Pacific Ocean. So it's a really special place that is very utilized and appreciated living here. So what's happened and changed I've lived here for about 23 years, and when I think about the mountains, what's changed is from some of our fires. So I looked it up, and we have had, since 1990, we've had 14 significant fires in Santa Barbara. And when I looked over that list of fires, I identified 7 of those that directly impacted my family. So, and that varies by each fire, but I either felt like we were in some sort of harm's way, it closed our schools or our work, we were on a mandatory or a voluntary evacuation warning, anything like that, just something that impacted our life in any capacity. So there's 7 of those, which is, not nothing, especially when our house kind of buffers up right to the mountains. When those fires happen, what happens is that they let them we do controlled burns, is my understanding of what the firefighters call it. They let an area burn because that is nature, and it's supposed to happen. And we want those old, dried out pieces of wood and leaves and all, everything to burn, and then have new, fresh growth, strong, that has strong roots, and that's better overall. So when a fire does strike, whether it, is a climate change strictly related activity, if it's somebody who had a bonfire and forgot to put it out all the way or neglected to, what they do is let them control burn. So and how the mountains go, they're, crests and valleys, right up behind the city. So what they want to do is let the fire burn in the mountains, and not down into the city. And they let it burn until they'll create like a stop line, and it will let everything burn all you want to that point, and then kind of push it over the ridge away from structures. So that's happened numerous times. We've had like I said, 14, but 7 to me, Sherpa, T, Jesucita, Gap, all these different fires that we've been cautious about. And so they let fires burn. When there's a new fire, the firefighters will oftentimes push it towards a previously burned area so that once it hits that line, there's nothing more for it to burn. And that's been over of those 7 fires that I said that I felt significantly impacted by, that's what they've done. And although I've been evacuated and there's been, 70 yards from my house, there's been a fire and a line of fire trucks, it's worked. So more recently, December, what's now January, we had another fire here in Santa Barbara. So it used to be that the fire season was summer when it's hot and we have the sundowner winds and we're worried that it's going to push it through those low points in the mountain range into our city. Now, in December of 2017, we had a fire that we didn't expect to ever reach us, ever, really. Like, we're like, oh, our neighbors now are having a fire. That's sad and scary for them. But it burned because we've had more fires in this area of all that old growth burning, and now we've got new growth coming. Just a couple miles away in Montecito, hadn't burned in a long time. So it was just right. It was like kindling up in those mountains. So when the fire started, it went from Ojai and Ventura, which is just south of Montecito. It's another county though, right? So like it's not right next door. Ojai, Ventura, into Montecito, all through those mountains, and reached into Santa Barbara. So it was this crazy fire that, and the effects of it were the most dramatic effects that I've seen. Of all the fires we've been through, this one, you couldn't go outside. You had to wear those like industrial grade masks. Everywhere you went, everybody else had those on. It was kind of like Armageddon. It was a very strange December and surreal and distracting. It was just like this heavy, not just a heavy ash that was falling like snow, but it was a heavy feeling all over our community. So we had this long fire. It was the largest fire in California history. So massive. We got that put out. It was great. And right before Christmas, everybody was coming back into town and it was festive and it was great. And we were, it was just, kind of preparing for like every other fire, what the next steps will be like, we're going to plant and we're going to, it's good that it's all burned and we can just be happy that amazingly in that fire that nobody was hurt and no structures, very few structures were damaged in Santa Barbara County. Then fast forward to a couple weeks and we had this crazy like torrential rain, unprecedented rain. As a rain was anticipated, and because it had just burned, none of those roots, there was no plants to hold anything. All of it had burned, and so there was just 12 inches of loose soil that were just ready to be washed away. So everybody was warned, especially in that Montecito area that was right, because the hills right above them, that's where the fire had burned. So in a more significant way. So those people, they're like, oh, if you were up right next to the mountain, you were in a mandatory evacuation zone. And there was only a small amount of people. And then from the mountain to the ocean it was a mile and a half, maybe 2 miles, probably more like a mile and a half. So there's a lot of that area that was in voluntary evacuation. So they said, if you're in mandatory, you should leave. And of course they should have, and heeded that warning. However, you have to know that these people had just evacuated for the fire, a lot of them twice. Even us in our area, we're a couple miles from where the fire was, we evacuated twice. It was just that bad. So there was this evacuation fatigue. So people weren't leaving. They were staying. They were packing their cars. They were prepared. They had their pets close by. But really, it's rain, and we don't get rain. And the meteorologists in our area are like famously incorrect when there's any fluctuation in weather. So, so unfortunately, some people stayed in, even though it was a mandatory evacuation. Then in all that voluntary, and having been through fires, a voluntary evacuation is be ready to leave. So those are the people that packed their cars and they, got all their important documents and they were ready, but really I'm going to watch the football game and then I'm going to go to sleep. And if I'll wake up if anything crazy is happening, and then we'll get in the car and we'll leave. So the rain hits. It's this, the sky opens up and it just dumps rain. And when it hits those mountains that are sloping towards Montecito, it just pushes that 12 inches of topsoil. And with it, we've got a lot of oak trees up there that are hundreds of years old. Their roots are deep, but they're brittle. And so these trees are just rolling down like a log jam and wiping out everything in its way. There are boulders that my friend told me about one boulder that was 4 tons. And in order to remove these boulders, because the mountain just slid down through this community all the way to the ocean, covered the 101 freeway, this one boulder went through that he saw, and they're like, how do you break up a 4-ton boulder? It's gigantic. They had 3 men rappelling down the boulder with jackhammers, breaking it up, and then putting explosives inside. I mean, this is what was a marble rolling down the hill and crushing everything in its way. It rolled down with the ease of a marble, but it just would wipe out a house. So trees, mud, boulders, just wiped out, fell off of our mountainous area, which is what we've loved. That's where we spend our free time and where we show off our beautiful cities. We take people up to the mountains and look down. So now all of that's wiped out. About 15% of the mountain slid down. And so what's next? What does it look like? It looks like we, number one, go in and clean up. I'm going to be on a mud brigade tomorrow. I have to show up with my shovel and boots and gloves, and we just go see who needs help, and you help them dig out their cars and their houses, because the mud was 10 feet high in this neighborhood. So after that comes after the cleanup comes the planting, and now we need those roots and we need plants back in that burn scar area. So that will come next. And I know from previous fires that after the cleanup, and when you go back and you see the burned out trees and just ashes of things, within a couple days you start to see the regrowth coming through, and it's just little sprigs of green, and it's always like, oh, it's amazing, we're coming back, we're so excited. This is the way that nature is handling things here, right? So that will start to happen on its own, and that mountainous region needs a little more support, so they're going to do a lot of planting to encourage growth. And then I guess the only other thing besides trying to get the trails back and usable again, the other impact that will happen is that there's a little bit of PTSD, and people will leave. The next time we have a rain, which doesn't happen often, I imagine people will leave and they won't want to be home in that area in case anything happens, because everybody did everything that they were told before. A lot of people, they packed their sandbags and they tried to redirect the water flow, and they then their houses were washed out. So that'll be part of it. There'll be a healing, and but our community, as always, will come together and learn and grow from it and be stronger because of it. So I hope that whoever watches this, Blake, Are you out there? That's my son that told me to do this. I hope that you come and enjoy. That's one of our fears, is that people are hear about what's happening and will assume that Santa Barbara is just a complete disaster area. And currently it's only a small portion of it. So come to Santa Barbara, come enjoy our beautiful mountains and our beautiful views, and come appreciate all that we have. And